Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh of MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is the owner and driver of Duct Tape Debbie, Frank Gonzalez. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great.
Awesome, man. It is an honor to have you on. I feel like we've known each other for 20 years, even though I haven't known you that long. Cali boy, but you come out, you make it a thing to come out to the shootout, and it sounds like this year the car might be in action out there at the shootout. I'm really looking forward to seeing this car in person.
No, thank you, and thank you for having me on MitsuTimes on your podcast, and I really like what you guys do for the community, for the shootout, and man, definitely looking forward to racing in the shootout. We'll see what happens, man.
Absolutely.
It's all about having fun, right?
Yeah, and it's before we even get into the questions, it's one of those things where the shootout is a lot of people's dream to race at, dream to win. But if you live way out on the West Coast, it's even more difficult. So the fact that you're going to make that trip out, I just think that's so exciting. I'm so excited for you, and I'm not even the one doing it.
And I can tell you, I haven't stopped thinking about it since the last shootout. It's like, how am I going to get ready? How am I going to prepare? What do I need to prepare? And, it's just the obstacles that make you a stronger person.
For sure.
And the learning, all the learning you do in the way of those obstacles. So.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, I want to get right into it, Frank. What's the setup on your 1G? Because it's a very special car.
Well, it's a pretty simple setup. The engine, it's an aluminum rod, 10-to-1 compression, built by Ted Speck in the Bay Area, San Jose or Milpitas. I had that motor since 2015. I haven't really started racing that motor until 2018, 2019. So I had that motor for a while. The head is just Kigley springs, oversized valves, GSC cam. It's on a Super 99, but that's gonna go out. That's gonna go out pretty soon. Injectors. At the time, I was running 4 2200cc injectors. Magnet Fuel 750, JMF fuel cell, AMS, VSR, intake manifold. The transmission is just a 2G auto with the precision number 7 converter, Liberty gears, all the jazz, Aaron Gregory valve body, Jeff Bush, oil pan, and then it's tuned on the AM Infinity ECU 508.
Nice. Heck yeah.
It's nothing too crazy or custom. Everything's off the shelf parts. So if I ever needed to get anything, I can just we can just get it off the shelf from Extreme or from any other place. So that's kind of how Ted intended it to build this engine, and that's the way we did it. Nothing too crazy. It's just like a really well built engine with a 72 millimeter.
Something really well thought out.
Yeah, a little bit.
I like it.
It's definitely took its challenges because the car used to be stick shift. So that was probably the biggest struggle is figuring out the car between different setups. It used to be on a Precision 67, 66. And that turbo blew up on the dyno, and one of my buddies was like, well, I have a Super 99. So I switched it over, and then at the same time, when I went Super 99, I switched it over to auto, but we can talk about that on the other section.
Okay. Well, Frank, what is it so long ago that got you into the 1G platform in the first place?
Oh man, let's go back to memory lane. I was never really into Mitsubishis to begin with. It was more of a we're in we're in school and everyone's talking about the Fast and the Furious, and I'm like, what is that? And I watched it, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's just a bunch of cars racing around everywhere. So I was very oblivious on like the Fast and the Furious movie. I thought it was cool, but then like going to high school back in 04, 03, 04, 05, everyone was getting Hondas. And of course, you know, I got influenced by my buddies, and I picked up a Honda, which got impounded a week later. When that Honda got impounded, it was an Acura Integra. I go to the impound yard, and they told me, "Hey, man, this is gonna cost like $1,500 to take out because you don't have a license." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's a bummer. I don't have that money." As I'm walking out of the impound, there's a bunch of wrecking yards, and I saw this very unusual vehicle, and I'm like, man, this car looks kind of cool. And it was a first gen Eclipse. It was red. It looked like it was abandoned, and I had no idea what it was, but I just opened the door and sat in it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit in it and see how it is. And I like the interior, I like everything about it, and I was like, this is cool. Never did research. There was no internet, no nothing. I just moved on. Later on, I grew up in San Diego, California, which is like really close to like Mexico and down south. It's like really down south. You know, there was a lot of performance shops at the time, and you know, high school coming into a close. Everyone's getting cars and everyone's getting their licenses, and I got my license, and you know, we had roommates, and I had a roommate that had a Talon, and I said, man, I seen this car before, but it was Mitsubishi, and he's like, oh yeah, they're all the same, Mitsubishi, Laser, whatever. So you should get one of these, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, procrastinated. So fast forward to all the roommates and all the Talon talk. I used to work at a chicken wing place. And my coworker had a 1992 Talon automatic all-wheel drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I looked at the body, and I'm like, dude, this is the cleanest, you know, I didn't know they were called DSMs, Talon at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to ask him what's up with it, just out of the blue. And he's like, yeah, man, I hate that car. It overheats. It's really slow. Something's wrong with it. And I'm like, is it turbo? He's like, yeah, it's turbo. So I ended up buying the car for like $200. He hated that car so bad, and I can see why. It had, I think it skipped timing and overheated. It had so many issues that even I was like well over my head. I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. So I started digging into it, you know, not knowing how to do a timing belt. The car blows up. I did the timing wrong. Went and did it again until I got it right. Luckily, the roommate came by, and he helped me out, and we got it running. But unfortunately, that car blew up again. And this is all like learning the hard way. The only way to learn is to do it yourself. You know, there was no internet back then for me. I had no idea there was DSM tuners. I didn't even have, there was no smartphones, no anything. I mean, we had to get into like a desktop and go to like, you know, the road engineering website or the DFAQ website.
Yeah.
You know, to do all the free mods. You know, we did all that, and we learned. But the other thing was, the car was an auto, and everyone swore by the stick shift, and I was like, dude, I don't know if I can make this car fast. You know, crazy, like now autos are like the dominant transmission, but back then I was like, dude, I have an auto, I'm already like starting in the wrong foot.
Right.
You know. So, you know, the car obviously blew up. I think the transmission was, now that I know what I know, I think the TCU died on it, and it was just stuck in third gear. But I had no idea. I'm a kid, you know, like I sold a car to some guy in Mexico, and he took it down there, and I don't know what he did to it. And I picked up a front wheel drive Eclipse.
Okay.
1G. and rebuilt the motor. Now I know what to do. Rebuilt the motor, did a 14B, but the shell was pretty rough. It was like primered. It was primer black, tan interior. It was really rough. I just drove it around. I didn't care. I was having fun learning the car. And then I came into an opportunity of picking up. I was really big on like the body looking clean, or the shell having a nice like paint job, like a nice factory paint job. And I came across a 1990 Laser, and I knew that the Laser was the lightest out of the bunch. So I picked up the Laser, parted out the clips, sold the shell to someone, and I was really big on those Japanese import engines. For some reason, like when I ever put a Japanese import on, I rebuilt the motor. It just never really ran the same. But that was just me, the butt dyno. And back then, you could buy one of those JDM crate motors, and they came with small 16Gs. And I never knew that they came with a better turbo. I just put it on and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Now I know why they ran stronger, because the American spec engines came with 14Bs. So yeah. So I picked up that Laser, did the motor swap. That car had a 14B, but it was still a Japanese motor. Then I did all the basic mods. I did the intercooler, did an exhaust. Had like an old school Gretty SP2 exhaust, an intercooler, Spearco intercooler, and then still had like the 1G mass. It was very basic, but we did the fuel pump rewire, and that car was just, it was, for its time, it was pretty fast on the street races.
Heck yeah.
Like we would street race this car in San Diego, and everyone's like, man, your car doesn't look fast, but it's pretty fast. Somebody broke into the car, and they cut up the harness. They did a bunch of stuff to it. They took all the easy stuff to take out, but they cut up the harness. I don't know why they did that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Move on. So I took a break from cars and just started working at a different job. I got out of the restaurants and went into what I do now, tile. And I said, you know what, let's look at Craigslist again. And I found a guy selling these all-wheel drive Eclipses, and it was a primered. It was a primered one. It wasn't that pretty, but the interior was clean. Made a deal with the guy, and I'm back in the game.
Heck yeah.
And I kept the engine from the Laser, because I was like, I'll scrap the Laser and cut my losses, and I'll if I find a clean shell, I'll swap it in there. But this car had a Japanese motor in it already, all-wheel drive, and I was like, all right. Picked up the car for like $700. I was like, this is a steal. So put the cars together. Car's running stronger than ever. And again, I'm doing this outside my apartment's parking lot. Limited tools, trying to not get caught from the manager, and it was pretty ghetto, to say the least. But we did it, and we took it out, parked it outside a shop one day, came back out, and guess what happened? Someone broke into it, and again, cut the harness. At that time, I was like, dude, I'm surrounded by someone who doesn't like me. I'm cursed. At that point, I gave up. I said, I'm done. So whoever is looking at me is like, doesn't like the Mitsubishis, or they just dislike me altogether. I'm like, whatever.
Can't catch a break.
So a year passes. I took it to a year and a half. I was still working in tile, and I get the bug. And this is back in 2006. Yeah, 2006. And I think I saw a video on YouTube. This is when YouTube started coming out, 06, 07, and it was really slow back then in the business because we got the recession and stuff, and all I did is just, at the time, warehouse. I'm like, well, we have a desktop here, and I'm going to go watch YouTube, and I found this video of Shep running like his first 7-second pass, and I was like, there's no way that car does 7 seconds, and it's like insane. And then, I started looking at YouTube videos, and then I don't know if you remember, but Street Fighter was out there, out and about. And I was like, oh man, a Talon versus a Honda. There was a video, it's a Talon versus a Corvette. And it was I think he blows the motor up, but he still beats the car. I was like, well, at least he beat him, it's a 7-bolt. And everybody knew the 7-bolts, like, they have that reputation, like, the second gens, crank walk, yada, yada, yada. That was kind of like everyone knows that Eclipses blow head gaskets and they crank walk. That was their reputation. But at the time, I was like, I like Eclipses. They're pretty. It's a good package out of the hole already.
Yeah, great starter car.
And again, I go down the rabbit hole, and I go back to Craigslist. But this time, I'm living on my own. I don't live with my parents. I have no roommates. I was living in Mexico and crossing to the U.S. every day because I can live cheaper and have that, bachelor pad on the beach.
Yeah.
And then work on the stateside in a warehouse. So I was, waking up really early, doing all that jazz. And up and behold, I found a 1990 Eclipse GSX Champagne for $500.
Ooh.
And the car was really rough, and it's everything I disliked about a car. It was brown interior. It was champagne. I didn't really like champagne because it was pretty faded. And I'm like, you know what? But this is the most wholesome shell under 500, around $500. Maybe I can talk them down. Back then, the DSMs, especially the 1Gs, were the ones that you can lowball and you can get the price you want for them, and they're really cheap because nobody really wants the 1G. Everybody wants the 2G, or they want the Acura Integra, they want the Civic hatch, they want the oval shape. And for me, I like the pop-ups. So I was like, you know what? Let's hit him up. And it was an old Army guy. He was like retired, but he still wear his like uniform. And he lived pretty far deep into San Diego on the town called Campo, California. It's all farms and it was rare. And the first thing I see in the interior, like, it was the ashtray in the middle. It was completely full of cigarettes. And I was like, damn. Well, I'm like, at the time, I was like, well, that shouldn't bother me, but damn, the interior it's going to be pretty rough. So I go in the car, and he says, the car runs, but it runs rough. And I'm thinking, maybe it's a coil pack. Nah, he has a hole in the piston, smoking everywhere, but it runs. So the electrical system, for me, I was like, okay, cool. If the harness works, the engine is easy to fix because I know nothing about electrical. So, we made a deal. I said, hey, I'll give you $300 right now. He counter offers. Give me $400 and I'll trailer it to your whatever you need me to trailer it to. And I started thinking, damn, he got me there. All right, cool. So he trailers it to my buddy's house, which he lived in a farm. And I told my buddies, like, hey, it's gonna take me a while. I gotta get in a motor and I gotta swap it. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. Just swap the motor and just take your time. And at the time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to move back to the States to live in the farm at my buddy's house, so I have enough money to get this car going. So that's what I did. I started working little by little. I picked up an engine. I swapped it in there. I started driving it around. And this is back March of 2007. Yeah, 2007, when I picked up that car. And I had it running by the end of the year, and it was a daily driver. I would drive it every day to work.
Hell yeah.
And it just had like, the stock motor. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go with the basic mods. And at that time we had the internet now. So I was going into DSM tuners. I was going into what website was that? The BFAQ, and then road race engineering, and I was just scoping the road race engineering website for those mods. So I got the exhaust, I got their intercooler, I got their strut bar. At the time I had chrome GST wheels, so I put those on the 1G, and it made it look good with the champagne. So I was like, all right, cool, the champagne is looking good. And I drove that thing everywhere. Just to make note, that is the same car I have right now. So the Champagne 1G is the same car that I have right now that's silver.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
It's the same one. Haven't changed it, nothing. It's the same. I had that car since 2006. So, time goes on. I start, making a little bit of more money, and then I met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and she's the one that met me in that car. And I told her in the beginning, it's funny. Now that I think back, it's kind of silly, but I'm like, hey, by the way, just letting you know, like, I like cars a lot, and if that bothers you, then maybe we shouldn't be together. And she looked at me like, why would it bother me? And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Didn't know what she was getting into.
Oh, no. She was not. But no, she saw the 1G, and, I taught her how to drive stick in that car. What else? I used to take it in Mexico a lot. That car, I would go down to Tijuana, Ensenada, and everyone's like, oh, my God, you're taking a DSM over there, you're going to blow up. I'm like, yeah, it did. It blew up. Blew a head gasket in Mexico. Went to AutoZone, got a head gasket, swapped it in the parking lot, slipped a new gasket in there, and used the same head studs.
Hell yeah!
Threw it back in there, and that's it. But yeah, got with my girl, started living together, and we moved north to Anaheim, California, which is about 2 hours north of San Diego, and it's just life started evolving then, and the different setups were coming. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's definitely an evolution of that car, and honestly, like, the reason I still keep the car is just it's an evolution of me growing as a person, I guess, and learning. And it's like a self-ratification trophy that I see, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, I remember back in the day, I used to sleep in that car, and now it's just like the race car.
Yep. You peel back the layers and see all the other 1Gs that have inspired you to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have a lot of DSM friends after the second time the harness got cut. I kept myself away from everybody.
Yeah.
I had no friends in San Diego, and when the opportunity came by to move to Orange County, to Anaheim with my lady, I was like, yeah, let's do it. It's like a fresh start, and that's the way I thought about it is, it's different people. There's probably more cars over there. There's tracks. And that's the thing. When I first drove my 1G to a drag strip in San Diego. That was the first time I ever drag raced the car.
Oh, wow.
It ran like a 9-second 8th mile time, and I was hooked. After I did that drag race, I was like, oh man, this is cool. Like this is what all-wheel drive is.
Yeah. Get a little taste.
Yeah, and then there was a guy in San Diego he's still around. He's been racing his car for a very long time, and I was inspired by that because he was like the only guy doing it, and he's still doing it to this day. His name is Tony Loya out of San Diego, and yeah, it was. I was like, well, I'm gonna race my car, like street exhaust and whatever, and it ran what it ran, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I can see myself doing this more. So I moved to Orange County, and then back then there was the forums. So there was a forum in San Diego called SDDSM, and but there was also an LA DSM, and I made a post there like, hey, I'm moved from San Diego, just looking to see where the meet's at, and that's how I met all the DSM guys from LA back in the day,
Okay.
and that was a new beginning, like a new chapter of just learning the cars, and then meeting the friends that I have now that we still talk to now, and it was definitely a turning the page moment.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's how it got me into the DSMs. I mean, it was a weird way. Everyone has a different story. They say, "Oh, the Fast and Furious." Like for me, it was more like, oh, everybody's getting Hondas. I got the Honda. Oh, it got impounded. Well, what is this weird Batmobile looking car that has pop-out lights? I always like cars with pop-out lights. Like, I mean, the 90s cars, like the RX-7 has pop-out lights. The Corvette has pop-out lights. Like something about pop-out lights is just, I don't know. It just grabs my attention. It's kind of sleek.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Frank, you talked about what this car was like when you first picked it up, but when you first picked it up, did you have any goals with it? Is there anything that you wanted to do in particular, or you just wanted to have fun?
Well, as my good friend Jeremy would say, it's time and money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have time, and I really didn't have money at the time. So it's like we all have inspirations. Oh yeah, back then, like the badass setup was the 5131 50 trim. That was like the badass turbo back then in the early days of DSMs down in SoCal. Or if you have a 30R, you're big baller, man, big baller. And I didn't have that kind of money, and I just kind of had to work my way up through so many different setups.
Yeah.
I mean, the first things first, I got introduced to the Wild MOD. I went to one of them, and I was just overwhelmed. It was like, holy cow, this is insane. We all took a caravan. LADSM used to do a caravan and drive straight to Cypress, California, to the Mitsubishi headquarters. It was overwhelming, like seeing all the different cars. And I told myself, I'm gonna have my car looking clean, and I'm gonna do everything. If it's stockish, I don't care, but I'm gonna make it looking clean.
Yeah.
First thing I did is I did a paint job on the car, and I painted it black. And I don't know if I've shown you pictures, but the car was black. I did the whole black, and it was black on black. And then I changed the champagne interior to like a gray interior. So I always like black cars.
Yeah.
Black 1Gs are my favorite, and I went ahead and changed it to a black 1G.
I think I do remember seeing a picture of it being black.
Yeah, it was black. It was black with a gold sparkle. It was nice.
Okay.
When it was black, I decided, okay, well, let's get the bolt-ons. Let's find out, and at this time, I'm talking to the guys at Rotors Engineering. They used to have DSMs too, and they would come to the meets, and they were like, just go with the 16G. 16G is the way to go. So got the 16G, and I got the SAFC.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found this company called TMO, Technomotive. They used to make those chips.
Yeah.
So I told the guy, hey, I want to run, 720 injectors with this two-step, and I got this chip, and I got an EEPROM ECU, and threw it in there with the SAFC, and this is the first time ever getting a Y-band. This is when Y-bands were kind of affordable.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be like $1,000 back then, and I think the AM Uego, you able to plug it in with like $350. I got one of those, And we were tuning it with the SAFC, and then the TMO chip was pretty close, and it was a quick car for what it was on the street on 91 octane.
Heck yeah.
And I mean, back then we didn't have E85 over here in SoCal, so it was either you run like 109 octane or you run pump, and everyone was all about making power on pump. So I was like, I drive this car everywhere. It's, this is my daily driver at the time. So I was just driving around with the 16G, and as we're on the forums, everyone's getting the new thing. And back then, the dominant tuning for the car was either an AM V1 or DSM Link 2. And this is when Thomas Doors released the DSM Link Lite and DSM Link version 3.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, well, I can't afford the full, but I can get the Lite. And I went ahead and got the Lite. And every time I change something on the car for some odd reason, I have to change everything. I don't know why. It's not good for me. I guess I'm a masochist. But I was like, I want a bigger turbo. I'm done with the 16G. And I had found a 20G for sale. So I got the 20G, but then I found something else that was unusual. The Frankenstein turbos from back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a 20G, but it had a Garrett wheel in it, and I was like, oh man, this turbo looks pretty legit. I bought it from the DSM tuners, somebody from DSM tuners, and threw it on there, and the car and this is when Road Race just got their dyno V3 Lite, and then that's when everyone was talking about ethanol. Hey, there's an ethanol station in Pomona, it was pretty far from me at the time. And I was like, well, I'll just pump 50 gallons of E85 and store it in my apartment's garage. I don't care, It's all about making power, right?
Yeah.
The car gets tuned on the DSM Link Lite, 2G MAF. It made like 400 horsepower. I was like, oh my God. When it made that power, I was like, let's do one more pull. And remember the time I said I changed the head gasket in Mexico?
Yeah.
That was the same head gasket, but the same used head studs. The same 1G used head studs. So I turned Road Race into a lake.
Oh.
The whole entire water, everything came out. The top radiator hose popped, fluid head gasket, but it still made really good power for what it was, a stock 6-volt Frankenstein level 2.
Heck yeah.
We swapped the head gasket, got back into it, and you already know where this is going. We're gonna go to the track.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Kenny Klein of Just a Tune. He offers both dyno and street remote tuning, track support, remote diagnostics, repair services, and parts sales. He has over 20 years experience with the DSM building, tuning, and racing. Find all that in one person plus the knowledge he brings to the table makes him a one-stop shop for all your DSM needs. I trust Kenny with my FP Black 2G GSX, and he has made everything a breeze. His level of experience is truly worth the price of a tune. He can be reached at Facebook or email, kenny@justatune.net.
We go to the track, it ran 12s, and then ran it again. And this is on street tire, all season tires. And finally did like an 11.9. So we got our first, and back then running in 11s was like, yeah, man, you have 11. Oh, it was huge. Oh my God. You have a pretty quick car. Kept having fun with the car, kept racing the world. Eventually that poor Frankenstein level 2 exploded. The whole entire compressor wheel just got destroyed, and there was better turbos out there, and started looking around again on DSM tuners, and I came across the Force Performance FP Green. This is the first time I ever buying a Force Performance turbo. I heard really good things about it. Threw it in the car, took it in the dyno, and the car made 30 more horsepower than before. So it was like 430 horsepower. And the car went just deeper into the 11s. I think it did 11.5. And this was, again, no slicks. It was just all-season Pirelli P6s. Stock trans, ACT clutch, 6-puck. It was just a basic setup, and it was fun. It was just racing. And my buddy just got a Corvette. He used to have a DSM, but he just got a Z06.
Oh.
Those things back in the day out of the package were pretty stout cars. We raced, we lined up, and I only lost by a little bit, but I ended up taking out my 6-bolt with it.
Ooh.
The ring lamp popped, and that was it. Time passes, we go back to the classifieds, and we find a guy parting out a 2G with the built 6-bolt. That's it. I went to go look at the 6-bolt. I told him how much you want for the motor. Well, I want like $800, and I look at the car, and the car looks like it got into an accident, like it T-boned somebody. So I said, yeah, I'll give you, I'll give you the money, for a built motor for $800. You can't beat that. So we're taking out the motor, and I'm like, hey, bro, your oil pump and your alternator ear is completely chopped off. Like the casting, like it's gone. And he looks at it and he's like, man, I don't care. Just give me whatever. I'm like, I'll give you $400. And he was like, just take it. I'll take it, whatever. So I take the motor home, and I'm like, okay, Jace Racing, alternator relocation, put that alternator in the back, problem solved. I got myself a built motor. Take it back to road race, dyno it, and made like 460. So I made more power. Same turbo, same intercooler, same injectors, E85. And I had fun with it. Just kept driving in. I said, I think I want more. And I have a good friend. He lives in Colorado now. He used to live in LA, and he used to film all the Motor Trend guys and Roadkill. His name is Clint Stringfellow. And he was like, Frank, the way I'm seeing it, you're never going to be happy. You're always going to want more. And I'm like, yeah, I know. At the time, there was the ball bearing turbos from FP. It was the DSM 86, the 82. I think they were barely coming out with like the Super 94, but that was like way too big for me at the time. And I found a 3582.
Ooh,
and
nice.
I'm like, all right, well, let's throw that in the car with the same motor that I have. I think I went ahead and got the L19s. At this point, I'm pretty seasoned, and it's still on DSM Link. I was talking to my friend, his name is Gustavo, Gus. And I told him, hey, man, what should I do? He's like, you should get 2 pumps. You should get these bigger injectors. So he kind of guided me through the build and helped me build the car by not doing stupid mistakes that caused the car to blow up. We did all those mods, tuned it, and we went from 450 to, well, we did it on pump gas first. I was curious how much power would it make on pump. And it made 450 horsepower on pump gas.
Oh, wow.
I was like, dude, how much power is it going to make on corn? We call it corn. He's like, I don't know. You want to find out? He's like, let's put some corn in it. So we put 85, tuned it. First pull, 590. Second pull, 610.
Oh, shit.
Like, you want more? I'm like, yeah, let's do more, and then let's spray it on top. I think at the end it made like 660, max effort, but we kept it at 600 and like 612.
Okay.
And I remember we dynoed that car from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. That's how long we were there for messing with that car.
Jeez.
And the car stayed together. No drama, no nothing. I was honestly impressed. I was like, wow, dude, this is impressive.
For sure.
And I could say that's the funnest time I've ever had in the car. I'm making note of it. This is the funnest time I've ever had with the car. Like, not working on it, driving it everywhere. I drove it to Vegas, raced it. I won one IFO with that setup in 2014. It was fun. It was a fun car, but I was blowing up transmissions though, and that's when I went with the Jax HD 2.2 drag setup, and that was the game changer. I mean, I was able to shift. That's the first time I got slicks after I got that transmission.
Oh yeah.
I got the Mickey Thompson's 24.5s, and then that car was it just worked. It was a 10-second street car.
Nice.
After so many events that I was going to, at the time I was all about the import face-offs. After you go to one and you win one and you're like, okay, let's see if we can get competitive. And I went to Bakersfield, blew up a shifter cable, and I didn't have spares with me, and I went to another one, and that's when the head gasket finally just left the chat.
Oof.
So I started thinking, well, should we continue on this path, or should we upgrade? And one day, in the decision that I decided to make the car into a race car instead of a street car, which I always have that middle ground of regret. Like, I like having a street car, but then things happen for a reason. Because at the time, I was having kids, and like, you start thinking a little bit different when you have kids. And before I put a cage in the car, I went and did some street tuning with my buddy that was tuning the car at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we unintentionally were racing the helicopter.
Oh.
So the PD helicopter was following us, and we were doing third gear pulls, 110 on this commercial area. And I heard a ticking sound, and I'm like, did I blow my motor? And I look over, and it's a helicopter. But the helicopter didn't have the lights on me. But I'm like, that's a helicopter. I know helicopters. So I continued driving home. My buddy who was tuning the car is like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going home, dude. This doesn't feel right. The car has a nitrous model. At the time it had Hoosiers in it. So it was low profile. It was not low profile whatsoever, especially in California where they're crushing cars if you're doing anything wild. So I drove, almost got home, and basically got pulled over by 3 patrol cars, guns out.
Jeez.
And I was like, oh, dude, like, what did we do? Stay calm, turn off the car, take us out of the car. And long story short, wrong place, wrong time. We're chasing a guy who was stealing copper on a black car, and your car fit the profile, and you're driving really fast, and the helicopter was like, what is this guy doing? And I told him the truth. I put a new thing in my car, and I wanted to test it.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, well, drive your car home, and if I ever see your car in the streets, I'm going to take it. I'm like, all right, cool. Fair enough. Drove it home. I was like, oh,
wow.
man. And that's when I made the decision, you know what, let's put a cage on it. Let's get NHRA stuff, and let's stay out of the streets. But then I had kids, and then the car took literally 7 years for me to complete after that setup. And I didn't, after that, it's what you guys see now, the silver car.
Yeah.
Because I did the paint job, I did the PPG dog box. I went all out on it, but it took time. You gotta spend time with the family. You're having kids. You gotta work a lot. I was in a point in my career where I had an opportunity to prove myself with my abilities with tile, and I was like, well, this is the moneymaker, so I got to keep going. And car stuff you have to wait too. Dog box took forever to get. A wiring harness took forever to get. So, just time flew.
Yeah. Good deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, we went over the setups that you've had on it. You think if you could go back in time and go through all those builds again, you would still do them all, or is there a setup you think you would skip out on?
I wouldn't change anything at all.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what. Somebody's trying to ask you, right? Like, I learned this throughout the years, right? Somebody's trying to ask you, like, what do you think I should do if I want to stay a street car? At least I can tell them what to do to stay a street car.
Yeah.
Like, I've come across when I ask, like, hey, what should I do? And they're like, oh, get a big turbo, do this, do that. And, now it's like, well, if you want a street car and you want to, like, bang gears and you want to drive to Vegas and you want to make your car reliable, then the setup. Stay with this turbo size, stay with this fuel, stay with this trans. If you want to go fast straight, you don't care about drivability, okay, fine, go full-blown race car. Like, at least I can say that I've been through all the stages in my car,
Mm-hmm.
and it's helped me. It's helped me be a better car guy, a better builder.
Yeah, for sure.
You can offer the right advice to people, and it's a wonderful learning experience as you go through the different stages. Because every stage is different. It's a different approach. You learn the tolerance of the stock 6-volt. You meet the tolerances of your budgets. You meet the tolerances of the transmissions. So, like, I think I wouldn't change anything about it. If anything, if I had to do it again, I would do it exactly the same, and I would just get things a little bit faster. Like, I wouldn't have gotten like a TMO chip, I would have gotten like a DSM link right away.
Mm-hmm.
Little things like that. But other than that, I would just keep it the same. There's nothing that changed, because that's what made me who I am, learning all those different stages of building the car.
Right. Okay. Well, Frank, let's talk about, we talked about a lot of street stuff and dyno numbers. When was it that this car broke into the 10s for the first time? What was the setup on it?
It was the 35R. So I was experimenting with tires. And at the time, I had the Hoosiers, 2 TPs on the car. And I had a very difficult time launching the car with those tires,
Mm-hmm.
that size, with that weight. And I branched out to Fernando at O-Star Motorsports, because at the time he was like the guy that ran the fastest on the stock block. And I noticed his car had smaller slicks. So I asked him, hey, Fernando, like, what do you recommend? Like, this is my setup. It's kind of similar to his setup. He's like, oh, go with smaller tire. Smaller tire for that kind of power, for that kind of weight, it's gonna be better. I'm like, all right, cool. So IFO was coming up in Vegas. This is back in October, and we're preparing for IFO in December. It'll be December 14, 2014. So I was in Reno, and there's a Summit Motorsports in Reno. So I picked up 4 slicks because I was at a work trip out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up the Mickey Thompson 24.5 by 8 by 15, and I threw them on the car, and I went to Irwindale to test, and it was a day and night. I went from 1.615 to 1.4s.
Oh, wow.
And I was just playing with the launch settings, and it was like, all right, well, I think we're ready for import face-off. So we trailered the car, and I remember my first tow rig was a Dodge van. It had like those captain seats inside of it.
Yeah.
So grandpa-ish. But it was my father-in-law's van, and he was like, "Yeah, you can use it. Just put oil in it." I'm like, "Okay." So we go to Vegas. We did the thing, and I wasn't expecting to win. I just wanted to drive on import face-off, and they said, "Oh, you have to race." They put me in FIP for some reason. I think it was something to do with the turbo size or different rules. I don't know. They put me in FIP, and I was like, "Well, I'm going against the big dogs." And of course, on that weekend, it was like 1,000 horsepower Supra. It was like a bunch of really fast Hondas, like forward facing, and I'm just like, just like a DSM on a 35R. I'm like
Average guy.
Yeah, just a 6-point cage and power windows. I mean, I have full interior link. Like it wasn't. There's nothing race car-ish. It's just like in the middle. So, no parachute, none of that jazz. And of course, here comes. I see this trailer with this black 1G, and I'm like, Jake Montgomery.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, oh, I know that guy. Because again, I was a YouTube guy. I see the Nopi national videos, the IDRC videos, and I saw Jake Montgomery kick ass in his Black Talon. But this time he was auto, and I was like, and this is when the 2014. That's when the autos were really kind of coming out, and they're out there,
Mm-hmm.
So I see, Jake does one pass, and of course he does well, and the Supra is out there, and then I went and said hi to him. He was cool, like he's, oh yeah, kick ass. Finally see a different another DSM out here, and I'm like, oh, thanks, man. As it goes, I make it to the semis. The Hondas break, and then I'm supposed to race Jake.
Oh my gosh.
And like I'm just doing my thing, just stay focused. But I think Jake he broke a trans. He broke the planetaries, and the entire transmission was shot. Like I remember seeing it, and then just everything came out from the inside out.
Jeez.
And he was out. So I got a buy run, and then I'm lined up with the Supra, the 1,000 horsepower Supra. And I was like, oh God, like, all right, here we go. Again, when I made my first qualifying pass at import face-off, I forgot to mention that too. No, hold on. I qualified at 11-0. So I haven't run 10s. When I raced in the finals against that Supra,
Yeah.
I treat him, and I ran my first 10-9
Oh wow.
in that car. So it was my first 10-second pass and my first import face-off. And, obviously luck on my side. And just things lined up with certain. I think I was going to win against the auto guy. Jay Montgomery's car was like serious business,
For sure.
And I was like, damn, well, like, I guess I'm going to the next round. And, we congratulated each other, and it was quite the experience. Going back to California and just, having that win. And that's after they ran that 10-second pass. I was like, all right, let's go do more events. And that's when I stopped in 2015. In March of 2015, I stopped, took the car apart, and we're going to change the whole setup and go for more.
Okay. Well, heck yeah. So when was that first 9-second pass?
Oh, God. That was recent. That was because in California, we don't have quarter-mile tracks nearby.
Mm-hmm.
My nearest quarter-mile track is 3 hours away. And when I finally finished the setup on the car with it had a 67, 66, and it was on the PPG. I did take it to a quarter-mile track. Back then, Tim Zimmer was helping me with the drivetrain, and he picked me up at rear end. And he says, "Man, here it is. Here's a rear end," because I was blowing rear ends like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was overlooking something, not really like paying attention to what you can do with the standalone ECU. I was just dumping the clutch, breaking the rear ends right off. So Tim Zimmer got me a rear end. He's like, "Hey, this is the best I can do. Let me know how it goes." Throw it in there. I made 4 passes in it. None of them were a 9. And on the last pass where I finally got a clean run, the rear end just shattered. Drive shaft bouncing up and down.
Holy cow.
Done. And I already had the whole entire auto swap in my garage. I was very stubborn on doing it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to make this work. I have, all these parts. Why is it not working for me? Well, it's not the parts. It's the guy putting it together that's not really going about the approach, but
Still
the approach
learning.
properly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I didn't know that the Infinity had a launch timer where you can cut timing so the hit is not so hard, so you don't destroy your rear end. And then you can ramp in the boost.
Okay.
And I didn't learn that until I went auto. The auto is completely opposite. You want to add more power and ramp it in. On the stick, it's opposite. It's like you take power out and then you deliver it according to what your drivetrain or your track conditions. So back then I was like, okay, let's go racing. Like I didn't take the time to really like analyze and learn the computers and learn like how things work and take the time to talk to the right people that actually don't just want to tune the car to get you going and that's it. It's more to it than just that.
Mm-hmm.
Tuning the car that stays together is one part, but then tuning it to go A to B without braking, it's another.
Oh, for sure.
So that's what I've learned when I went auto. The first time it went 9s, it was one pass off the trailer, 9.4, blowing a head gasket. So I'm pretty sure that would have been an 8-second pass if the car would have stayed together and didn't go lean.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Vegas to import face-off, I came to a conclusion to myself that I really don't care about number anymore. Like, numbers are cool, but every time I go chasing a number, like, something always goes wrong.
Yeah.
So
End up breaking something.
the weekend before that 9-second pass, I was running a no prep event, and I was racing big tire cars in Arizona. And I was averaging 590 on a no prep on an 8th mile. 590, 580 on no prep. And I mean, to me, that's pretty quick on a unprepped track.
For sure.
We took second place on that. We won some money. We had some fun. And I told myself, should I go to Vegas? I was telling my buddy, should I go to Vegas? I mean, the car ran good. It sounded kind of funny, but it ran good. It's like, yeah, but if you think it's running good, it's running good. So the following week I went to Vegas, and that funny sound was coming to find out that it was a lean condition.
Oh.
And it took out a plug and it took out the head gasket. So, but it ran a 9.4 though, at 129. So next time we come out, we're hoping to do an 8-second pass. We're definitely going to go faster. We got more injector now. We got more pump now. We got more fuel line. But yeah, my first 9-second pass was in Vegas of last year, December. And it, in the 8th mile time, I was looking at that. It was a 5.9. So I was like, oh, wow, it would have been it would have been a decent, like a low 9 into a 8-9 if it would have back half. But right at 1,000 feet, the car started making a sound, and I should have lifted, but my foot was too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So the car felt good out of the hole, and I was like, maybe this will be a good run. Oh, damn, I blew up my car. It happened so fast. But, it's fine. We'll rebuild it, and we'll come back out and go to no prep events.
Well, you kind of hinted at it already, but what's the goal for 2024 with this car?
Realistically, I think going A to B and making the shootout is my priority right now. I'm still on the same motor. I'm probably gonna build a motor next year, but making the shootout, going A to B, then I'm probably gonna take a break and then come out in spring and race in no prep events.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I have to go up against like big tire cars. That's the only class I can race in. And a well put together car on the street will probably run like 550s, low 5s.
Mm-hmm.
So my 590 is not gonna do anything against these cars. So I have to be just a little bit more faster and make sure I go A to B. So I know what the car needs to go A to B. Make the car a little bit lighter. I put a lot of thought into that goal. I thought about maybe going big turbo, 80 mil, doing the whole jazz, but I'm like, I don't want to go back to that waiting game and the whole figuring things out. Like, I feel like the setup is refined, and I have to just fine-tune those little things that I feel like I need and leave the car as simple as possible. Because when you start overcomplicating things, I get overwhelmed easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also very impatient. So I try to not put myself in those situations. And also, truth be told, the transmissions and the planetaries, like, you got to kind of have a middle ground where you're having fun and you're kicking ass, but you're not like blowing every time. And I'm getting to the point where I kind of figured out where I need to be be consistently having fun, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like the Super 99, it was like a good combo, but it's not quick enough.
Yeah.
It needs to be it needs to go to the gym. So I know the Zonas have this, the Zona rotor has a pretty good turbos that have the same size, but pack a bigger punch.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be the game changer for my setup, and maybe I'll throw one of those in there.
There you go. Well, Frank, you've been doing this for a real long time. You've had countless 1Gs. If someone out there, they have a 1G, they're thinking about, doing a build, get a little bit quicker, what advice would you give them for their build?
Take a notepad and write down what you want from a car. Like, do you want to street drive it? Do you want to drag race it? Are you going to trailer it? Are you going to, figure out what you want to do. If your budget allows, you can have multiple cars. Cool. I can tell you from my experience, I had multiple cars at once, and it's very hard for me to focus on one car.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up not finishing anything. So write down what you want. I want to drag race. I want to drive it on the street. I want to do this, because every approach is different.
Right.
So write down the goals, and then, line up with the people that understand those goals, because not everyone sees every goal the same. Right. Everyone's different.
For sure.
Like, don't talk to the road course guy and ask him about drag racing. Like figure out with the people that have been doing it for a while. Hey, this community is very helpful. I'm very thankful to be surrounded by a lot of good people that helped me and really pointed me to the right direction, because I can say that thanks to the community offering their advice and their help, I've gotten a little bit faster as an individual. Like, there's a lot of guys I can name, and they kind of told me the same thing. It's like, well, what's your goal?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I never really thought about it that way. Like if you say, well, I want to run 8s, well, you can run 8s on an FP Black.
It's true.
Or you can run 9. And what's your goal? 9s. Well, you can run 9s on a 16G. What do you What do you want? What are you going to stick with? What is your goal? What is your realistic thing? I'm like, that's very true. When you come across it, you want to do max effort, you want to do bolt-on housing, there's so many ways of skinning the cat. That's the right phrase for like a DSM.
Mm-hmm.
So write down your goals, figure out like your budget, like what you can afford, because you can go 9s and 8s on Link.
That's true.
You don't need no fancy computer. Back in 06, people were going 7s on AEM version 1.
It's crazy to think about, but yeah.
Jeff Bush went 7s on a AEM version 2. I think that car still is on an AEM Series 2. Like there's more than one way to doing it. It just needs to fit within your budget,
right.
And it needs to fit within your tuner.
Yeah.
And that's another very important key here in your tuner. Pick your computer that your tuner likes to mess with. If your guy likes Field Tech, get the Field Tech. If your guy likes DSM Link, stay with DSM Link. It'll be less headache. It'll be kind of it'll be less headache for your tuner, less headache for you. Trying to find a tuner and all that stuff. I know the tuners are very easy. They're easier to get on the East Coast than it is on the West Coast because everyone's different. Like there isn't a lot of people that do DSM Link.
Mm-hmm.
But with today's technology, like you can hit up Kevin Dewar and be like, hey, can you remote tune me? And he'll tune you. He'll do a great job and he'll get you on your way. But like if you're new in the game and you don't know people, do some research, get your goals, pick the tuner according to the computer. So that's the advice I would give. Because hitting the parts are out there.
Yep.
It's more of refining the setup.
You need to pick your tuner first and then the computer.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get that the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Frank, what events can we come out and see your car in person in 2024?
Well, after the shootout, I might take a little break, but Las Vegas Import Face-Off is usually in December. So that's a very big possibility of me going out there.
Yeah.
Vegas is only like 3 hours away. But realistically, I like going to no prep events. So Arizona has some events. I'll make the drive, I'll drive 5 hours to Arizona. I think it's Chandler. Yeah, Chandler, Arizona. And I'll go race over there. I don't know. It grew on me. I was never really like into no prep. And then I went to one event and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I went to another event. And it's always in Arizona or in Chuckawalla, which is out in the middle of the desert on an airplane strip.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think they're going to have any events in the fall. Maybe they do. It's very random. They don't have these planned out. But if everything goes well and the parts come in on time, I'm waiting on some parts for the 1G right now. I'm probably going to test the car in July, probably in Irwin, though. Every Thursday night they have testing tunes, so probably go on Irwin, though, and then probably go to a no prep event on July 27.
Okay.
Just to see how competitive the car's going to be. For the import, for the DSM shootout. Just make sure everything is good and it goes A to B. If I don't win, I don't win. It doesn't matter. I'm honestly just... It's different when you race a car that you think it's going to beat you. you get into that mental. So it's more like training. You're training your head,
Yeah.
When you're testing and tuning it, like, you don't even care about the light. You just want to make sure you're going A to B. But when you're racing in the other events that have a 400,000 instant green, it's a little bit of a different environment. It's, getting the car to stall and doing it right, practicing the light. That's a different type of testing in my book.
For sure.
Think a lot of people that have done drag racing can relate to that.
Well, Frank, where can people find and follow you on social media and see some more pictures of your beloved duct tape Debbie onesie?
We got Instagram. It's all-wheel drive monster all together. You can find me on Facebook. And it's funny because I'm still not used to calling a car Debbie. I call it DBB.
Okay.
That's how my daughter named the car. She made it appropriate. So DBB stands for Don't Break Bitch. So I'm like, well, that sounds a little bit, violent. And it, the acronym is DBB. Well, it kind of sounds like Debbie. My daughter goes, it sounds like Debbie. Well, let's call it Debbie then. Duct tape Debbie, because it's silver duct tape and the DBB acronym. So we're like, duct tape Debbie fits perfect.
That is awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. But you can find me on Instagram under All Wheel Drive Monster, and then Frank Gonzalez on Facebook. Cool. And then on the forums, I'm All Wheel Drive Monster 1904, where I have my whole entire build thread when I started, working on the car from the 35R till now.
Oh, wow.
I didn't post anything before that. Okay. I lost a lot of the pictures from, I think, who was that? There was Tiny Pig, and there was another one, Photo Bucket.
Oh yeah.
I lost a lot of pictures on Photo Bucket, and I couldn't remember the password. I used to take a lot of pictures with, building the car and the different setups, and I lost a lot of that material there. And back then I had a BlackBerry phone, so everything was like through the BlackBerry, through the Photo Bucket, and that was a long time ago. But yeah.
All right, Frank, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout-out to anybody who's helped them get where they are, get their car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout-out to?
We'll start out with Oscar and Ivan at Inland DSM. Those guys are always supporting at the track, always helping me out, cheer me on. As well as the guys at Road Race Engineering, Sam at AAM, who helped me initially tune the car, as well as Armin from Armin Tune, who's always there to give me the track support and has helped me really fine-tune the car out there in the track. As I said before, the whole community has always been out there, being very helpful, helping me learn more about the platform. So there's so many that I can name, but I think everyone knows who they are.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Frank, thanks again for coming on here. I love your story. I didn't know that you've had that one car for so long. I think that's so cool. I think that's probably pretty rare in this community. And I hope that we can get some more people out there at the track, and maybe some more people out there doing some no prep events. They're becoming really popular, and I think the DSM is a perfect platform to get started in it.
Yeah, until they get banned. But honestly, the whole no prep thing, and I've told this to the no prep community, is like a Fox body can launch like an all-wheel drive. They have so much aftermarket support, and they have so much data from decades of just doing this, mm-hmm. that they are as competitive as an all-wheel drive Eclipse. And they don't see it that way because they automatically go, okay, well, all-wheel drive will out-launch any car. Well, yes and no. I mean, if you try to launch a car, you have an 80 millimeter turbo and you put the sauce in it, you don't think the all-wheel drive's going to spin. It's going to spin, and it's going to feel violent. It's going to marshmallow left and right. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
It's sketch. And in life, there's everything about balance. Like, you put too much power, you're going to spin regardless if you're all-wheel drive or whatever. If you're rear-wheel drive, your car's set up the right way, it's gonna move. And I've seen Fox bodies run 530s on the street. They're out there.
For
and
sure.
Like it's the way you set up the car. And there's new players coming out. There's those F-150s, all-wheel drive now, and they're probably gonna make an all-wheel drive class because those F-150s are no joke. They're basically like what I like to call them the muscle car GTR of the Ford world. Because, I mean, they have the Coyote engine and they have an all-wheel drive. And they have a 10-speed. So those cars are going to be a force to be reckoned with. That's definitely going to be a good race. Definitely looking forward to racing one and kind of see where I sit at. But I think the sport's going to evolve into having an all-wheel drive class. And it is where it is. Yeah. It's just forces us to modify our cars a little bit different and drive our cars a certain way. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to see more guys out there too. Definitely. The more DSMs out there, the better. Because we're kind of a rare breed over here, especially in Southern California. Like, there isn't a lot out here doing the thing.
Yeah. That's sad.
It's just different. I mean, everyone's tolerance to braking is a lot different than, it's so easy to get an LS swapped car and then dialing that in and the aftermarket support is there. When you have that, I guess I could say that the patience of getting something going it's a lot thinner out here. Mm-hmm. People are going go here,
Yeah. I get you.
Yeah.
All right, Frank. Well, thanks again, and I can't wait to see this thing in action.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Later.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.